Broadcast. Hello, listeners. Welcome to the Zaner MARKETCAST, your one and only spot to keep up with all of the agricultural market news of the week. My name is Joe Nikruto. We're part of the Zaner Ag Hedge team. My name is Joe Nikruto. How you doing?
I'm Dan Hussey. Good this week, Joe. How about yourself? How you been?
What's going on? Everything's terrific. Heck of a week. WASDE on Thursday. Today is Friday afternoon post-close. And so we're just going to take a quick look and bring everybody up to speed about maybe some of the things that happened this week. But before we get started with that, as we heard here just a few moments ago, you've got a terrific offer from the federal government.
Oh, wow. It's like winning the lottery, but losing the lottery ticket, I tell you. So nobody except for Joe here knows that I got an email today from the Department of Education, and I don't know if this is phishing or not, right? But I kind of looked into it. It looks like a legitimate email, but you're eligible to have your student loans forgiven. That's the big, title to it. And then inside the email, the Department of Education will work with your service provider to process your forgiveness. Kind of strikes me as odd as one, I no longer have any student loans.
I was going to say, congratulations.
Paid those off when
the American dream.
When the interest was going to hit out of it. And then, and I wouldn't have imagined somebody in my line of work, not working in education, not being a doctor or all these other things, would be viable for a forgiveness program. So there you go.
But no loans to pay off.
Yeah. So I don't, leave us a comment. If you've got student loans, you got this email as well. I'd like to learn more about it, right? There could be a story there for a lot of people, but not for me, unfortunately.
No story. Though we thought we had a big news story. With that, maybe we'll jump right into the numbers for the week. Corn, on the week, corn, beans, and wheat. Corn high was 437.5. Opened the week 433 3/4. High was 437.5. Low 427. Last trade, we show 435.5, up 1 1/4 for the week. Big winner in corn. Beans opened 1187 3/4, high 1193 1/4, low 1151. Closed last trade 1174, down 11 on the week. Wheat opened the week at 570 1/4, high 573 3/4, low 548 1/4. Closed at 555. That's May Chicago wheat, 555 1/4, down 12 cents.
Corn up a penny and a quarter?
Penny and a quarter
on the week? That does not feel like we ended up the week on corn.
But for some context, right? So those are your weekly numbers. Weakness in front of the WASDE for those markets. Today's close, corn up 6, beans up 12 3/4, wheat closed up 3.5. Still wheat, kind of the weak sister there. Not some pressure yet in wheat. But again, for context, those positive closes put, I believe, corn and beans into interesting technical territory, and maybe even wheat. There could be a story there. I think wheat was squarely inside, but still some technical possibility and rather interesting. Dan, I would think that we had these positive closes after yesterday's WASDE price action.
Yeah, and what a wild day WASDE was. Corn finishing lower on the day, expanding its trading range, making a higher high, but then a lower low to close, lower on the day. It felt like we were going to come in today seeing some more red on the board, and then
seemed like
they go right back up to test yesterday's high.
And there's some weather considerations. Going to get dry maybe in South America post rainy season. Here in the United States, we're looking at some places that have got rain, some places that have not, some places that have gotten too much. But you hate to say this, could very well be just short covering by funds in front of what could be some bad decision making in the Middle East. Apparently, the whole world's waiting to see what Iran is going to do with Israel, and what Israel will then do with Iran, and could be a potential broadening of the conflict, which probably nobody wants to see.
So, yeah, and conflict globally, things getting a little spicy in a few different places. you can understand why certain markets, gold, oil, outside markets, have seen an uptick in price volatility. And that doesn't just mean to the downside, right?
Absolutely.
That can be to the upside, right?
Absolutely.
And really, corn the last 2 days, it was an uptick in volatility. We saw prices compressing for the last couple weeks, really since our planting progress and quarterly grain stocks estimates that we got out that came out there a couple weeks back at the end of March, that I thought was going to leave this really great narrative for corn to maybe rally higher off the back of exactly what you're saying, funds covering now that we've got some bullish news for corn. Because remember, in that report, we saw that planting intentions reduced by the USDA down to 90 million acres. And to give some people an idea, 90 million acres at 184 yield bushels an acre, that's a 16.5 billion bushel production number for corn. If the USDA wanted to bring that acreage back to 92 million, well, if that yield comes down to 181 million,
trend line.
To trend line or slightly below, now you're back to that 16.5 production number still. So they've got this window for both of those numbers to kind of play around within 2 million acres on the acreage and a yield number to play with. And I wonder if now, that we're starting to run planters, solidifying on that acreage number, where does the market narrative go? We had a close today with some volume coming into the end of the day, put us into some interesting technicals, but you've made a comment to me.
14,000 contracts on the close. I mean, that was a big number for 14,000 contracts in May corn. And so that forces us to jump around a little bit. I thought maybe we would hit these two stories, and if it's okay with you, let's knock these out real quick. So, not the stories of the week, right? We were looking at a little different take for story of the week, but these are very interesting stories. We've got Carter has provided us with a couple of really neat things to pay attention to. China raises 2023-2024 corn, cotton import forecasts, as reported by Reuters. China's agricultural ministry raised its forecast for corn and cotton imports in the 2023-2024 crop year in its April outlook released on Thursday. Corn imports are estimated at 20 million metric tons for the season ending in September. Chinese agricultural supply and demand estimates, the WASDE report showed, compared to last month's report of 17.5 million tons. A bit of an increase there. However, it is expected that the quantity entering market circulation will be limited and import volumes will decline significantly in the later period. The report said. Meanwhile, cotton imports for the season ending in August are forecast at 2.3 million tons compared to 2 million tons in last month's report. So right off the back of this, there is then news that they're going to cancel some cargoes out of the Ukraine in order to increase domestic prices and incentivize Chinese farmers to maybe get that corn planted. So as usual, the Chinese appear to have a plan and they're certainly working it.
Oh, and by the way, importing 300,000 more metric tons of cotton, just kind of throwing that in there like you weren't supposed to notice, right? Like, and some more cotton.
For sure. The next Carter story.
13 states are fighting the current administration's EV mandates. We'll see. The Biden administration's national pollution standards that favor electric vehicles have no room and leave no room for ethanol and other biofuels to cut carbon emissions, the states argue. So the the EPA on March 20th finalized pollution standards for our passenger cars, light trucks, and medium-duty vehicles for model years 2027 through 2032. The states are asking the court to vacate this rule, and the states argue the agencies lack the legal authority to impose any fuel content factor that multiplies the nominal fuel efficiency of an electric automobile by a factor of 6.67. So they're pretty much saying that you're outside of your scope of the amount you're allowed to change this, and trying to get legal precedent for them to reverse that regulatory authority. So we'll see if the states can do it. I know I'm rooting for anything that puts more ethanol into demand. And it seems like these, unfortunately, the politicking that goes on behind this is still a game that's getting played.
And here we are yet another week where I still remain more than slightly salty about having woke up early at Commodity Classic and got to maybe go hear an announcement from...
It doesn't happen, right?
It's just terrible. It's terrible. I'm still mad about that.
Right.
I'm sure
and it's supposedly coming, right? Actually, by the 15th, we're supposed to hear something
May or
more.
April.
I thought it was by April 15th.
Okay.
I could be totally wrong
Could
about
be right.
that.
Let's make a note of that.
But like that's something. Hey, fact check me here, and in the comments section, tell me how right or wrong I am.
For sure.
But we'll certainly update on that because it's a big story. If things can happen, if they have something to tell us, right?
Absolutely. So that brings us. So story of the week, and Q&A kind of dovetail very nice. Dwayne from Iowa, what do you think of these Brazil crop output numbers? Do you think they will eventually be changed? John from North Dakota, what is the deal with the discrepancy in Brazilian production numbers between the USDA and CONAB? So two great questions and lead us to what I believe, Dan, let me know if you don't agree, but what I believe is the story of the week.
Yeah.
And that is the gap between what CONAB is putting out and what the USDA are putting out. Corn carryout numbers, 2.122 million bushels beans, 340 million wheat, 698. All of these numbers kind of at or slightly above expectations. So not surprised to see that price action on Thursday.
No.
But then once folks began to look at some of these, that Thursday morning update from CONAB and then the USDA number really caught a lot of people. It's very interesting circumstance, don't you think?
Yeah, and I think that anytime we get to point a finger at a government agency and use them as I don't want to say a scapegoat, but certainly, right, we don't like to see when there's discrepancies in anything because this is trade data. We rely on this. Many of us are financial decisions rely on this type of data. So it's you hate to use the term game, but a game that gets played with them sometimes. One little piece of, or excuse me, I was going to kind of do a leeway into a little microcosm of this, which is the USDA now looking into how they're getting the reporting data from China on export information, right?
And prior to this, as far as I know, the way we got this information from China is the Chinese told us.
Right.
Okay.
And now we're seeing, maybe now there's a discrepancy between that import data, everything China's importing, and what they're telling us they're importing, and what other trade data is saying, right? So the USDA is saying, well, you know what, let's take a step back. Let's look at the data, how we're collecting it, and see if we need to realign what we're doing. I applaud them in that effort, actually. That's taking a scientific approach to making sure you get the right data. Do we need to do the same thing with South America, though, right? There's a discrepancy there. The USDA coming in at 124 million metric tons in terms of total Brazilian production.
124 corn.
Correct.
Okay.
CONAB at 111.
111
That's
versus
huge.
124.
That's huge, right? When you talk about the amount of corn that, that represents on the, not just the global balance sheet, but certainly for China's ability to purchase corn.
And Karen Braun had a nice piece, I think, on X/Twitter, where she was talking about the size of that discrepancy and the fact that it was rather large, and we hadn't seen that kind of discrepancy for some time. Yeah. A lot of other folks, I know Ted Seifried has been talking about the fact that typically USDA will come in with lower numbers, and then those numbers will have to be raised. But with this size of discrepancy, that both of those questions or both of those become very, very relevant points. Are they going to have to change these numbers? And are the numbers in Brazil going to keep heading lower? Is the USDA going to adjust, or ultimately will those numbers come up? And big question.
Personally, I was shocked they didn't adjust a little bit on this report. I don't feel like they needed to per se, because, hey, they are within 2 million metric tons of where the USDA attaché in Brazil said they were, right? This is the group of USDA individuals on the ground in Brazil reporting back to the USDA their findings so that they can ideally hone in on what that number is. On April 2nd, that attaché put out the number of 122. That's down from 130 million back in November. So they're down to 122 now, is what the boots on the ground from the USDA are saying. I really don't know why they didn't update this report knowing that information and knowing that we know that information, but I don't know. Maybe I also have to say one thing about the USDA, which is they have a reason and a process behind all these numbers, right? Like they're not just thrown technically picked out of a bucket or
pulling a number out
of a hat. Thank you.
Yeah.
Right. There is a process. Whether that process is flawed or not, that's another story. but they have to be, hold themselves to that, right?
A lot of our listeners might suggest that they pull those numbers from some other place.
Yeah, and
maybe we'll edit that out.
Trying to stay right a little, but I agreed, right? At the end of the day, they are still a government agency, and it's still government numbers.
For sure. And that truly, I think that's the story of the weekend and leads us in terms, not to get back to price action or be overly technical in the face of these fundamentals, but brings us back again to today's close. And what we were saying before we came on here is here we are yet again another week where you look at, we're bumping into some real relevant technical levels, whether it's, support that we visited yesterday or the spaghetti that we have overhead in terms of these moving averages, whether it's the 55-day that's in the ATM.
Yeah, we were joking about the 50 or the 55-day. Right. Didn't really matter, right? That difference of a 5 and that stupid indicator, it's the same, right? Yeah. The same idea that there's a medium term, clearly visible level that somebody in the world decided to sell 16,000 contracts in corn defending into the close today. Yeah. That's a fact, right?
Merely derived or not.
Right.
14,000 is
that happened, right? There were 14,000. I'm sorry, I said 16. I want to get that number right. Those sizable volume into
the close. And so my point is that yet again, here we are on Friday with only 48 hours to wait until we see more price action. So we want to use those 48 hours wisely because we're going to be back in front of a screen before you know it.
Yeah, and it's interesting on that note that the prior 48 hours in corn and in beans to some extent, but particularly in corn, we've spent expanding the range in trade, right? Volatility is upticking the last 2 days. The next few days might only get bigger. I mean, history tells us anything. So,
do you think we missed anything?
I don't think so here. I know we got a fun question here. A surprise one. Oh, you got it first. All right. You got me last week. What's the most unusual food combination you've ever tried, and did you like it? It's interesting. He said combination, not just outright food item. Combination throws me for a loop.
Yeah. So I don't know if this is the right forum for that, seeing as how we're seated at a table in Chicago, but I've got a couple. One is I'll put some ketchup on a hot dog. Do you know what I mean? These Chicago people will
ladies and gentlemen, Chicago shootings have upticked by one today.
Drag me down the street, but I'm going to pickle relish, some ketchup, some mustard, and, fight me if you want to fight me,
No,
maybe the other thing. And here again, we are in Chicago. I'll put some pineapple on a pizza with ham on it.
Now that's where I'd have to stop you, sir. I'm with you on the ketchup on a hot dog, but pineapple does not belong on a pizza. Yeah, I must draw the line and have some decency. My unusual food combinations, would be basically the food I had in China 20 years ago about now. One was some delicious, what I thought was like sweet and sour pork dumplings. Turned out, it was pork. It was just pork bone meal made into a dumpling. So it was a bone meal dumpling. It was, it tasted just like sweet and sour pork, except it had a little granular consistency, like somebody sprinkled some sand on it or something. Wow. Was good. I'm pretty sure my calcium was upticked for the week. I had turtle and pigeon on the same trip, so I'm gonna go with and that and maybe some other unknown protein.
Sure. That's terrific. You are the winner. My pineapple pizza does not hold a candle to those things. Turtle and pigeon. Terrific.
Yeah.
That might bring us to a close for the week on this weekly review, weekly update. Do not forget, there should be a link at the bottom of this video so that you can sign up for the Zaner Ag Hedge hotline. There is no cost to that. You place your information in the link. We're going to shoot you a phone number that you can plug into your phone at your discretion. Very secure way to sign up for something and a very effective way to get updated on a daily basis. You won't have to wait for Dan and I to come up here and talk about pineapple pizza on Friday. But just a terrific way to get informed by Ted Seifried every day. And so you don't want to miss that. Sign up for that today.
Leave your likes, your comments below, questions. We love hearing from you guys. Until next week, the Zaner Ag Hedge. We'll be back with you as price action develops.